Welcome to episode 10. I made it. I made it to 10 podcast, and I'm very excited because I found a statistic a while back that said something like 95% of podcasts never make it to 10 episodes. So I think I'm going to make episode 10 the end of the first season because I'm a comedian and I realize my podcast is not very funny. It might be a bit disorienting for people who have seen my comedy shows to come to my podcast because, oh, what is all this woo-woo garbage? I just decided for my podcast I would talk about whatever I wanted to talk about, whatever was on my mind. And I'm kind of in a woo-woo phase right now. To be honest, I don't know that I will ever leave this woo-woo phase because it feels really good. There's a lot of variety and diversity within the woo-woo community. If you've listened to previous podcast episodes, you will notice that I talk a lot about Neville Goddard and Joe Dispenza and Martha Beck, stuff like that. I haven't really gotten into Alan Watts or Ram Dass or Eckhart Tolle, but those are all adjacent thought leaders that I have dabbled in a little bit. To start off today's episode, I wanted to tell you about two interesting gigs that I just had. The first of which I was booked for a while ago, and it was at a Democratic club, which I didn't totally know what that meant, but I came to find out it's a private members-only bar. But when I heard Democratic, I got really excited because I thought, oh, I can do my abortion jokes. And the ICE stuff has been kicking off, so I thought, ooh, I can make some jokes about that. And then the day of the gig, I called the booker to discuss details with her, and she said, so obviously no political material. And I was like, what? No political material? It's a Democratic club. And she told me that it's about a 50-50 demographic. It was quite a ways away from my house and in a rural part of Pennsylvania, so there definitely were some hardcore Trump supporters at this particular event, so I couldn't do my stuff. The funny thing was that even though I wasn't to do political material, the crowd was like up to rumble. They were pretty rowdy, gritty, out to have a good time. So it wasn't a clean gig. Like no swear words and no sex stuff. It kind of was just no political stuff, which is quite interesting that that's where we are as a people. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But the funny part about this particular gig was that when they booked me, they said they were having a fundraiser event from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Normally, when you get booked for something like this, they serve dinner around 6 or 6:30. People eat for about an hour. And then the comedian will do typically 30 minutes to an hour of material, finish their set, and then the people who've come for the event chat with each other, and it just wraps up whenever it wraps up. But the very common set length for comedians is 30 minutes to an hour. I found out the day of the gig, she wanted me to perform for 2 hours. 2 hours of staring at the same person. And look, I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I get that. I don't mind doing 2 hours. I certainly have 2 hours of material. I probably have about 3.5 hours of material, so I wasn't worried about that. I was more concerned about the crowd and their attention span and them having a good time. Maybe this doesn't sound crazy to somebody outside of the comedy community sitting through a 2-hour comedy show with the same comedian, but I want you to imagine watching a 2-hour movie and it's one shot and one actor with the same background. You would go insane. A 2-hour comedy show is very common, but in that instance, you would have at very least 2 comedians, but usually 3. If you go somewhere like Helium Comedy Club in Philadelphia, they'll have a host that comes out. They do about 10 minutes. They warm up the crowd. They let people order their food. Yes, that's a thing in the United States. If you go to a comedy club, many of them require a 2-item minimum once you are in the showroom. And you have to order those items during the comedy show. So it's not my favorite part about American comedy clubs. The host will be interrupted. At some point during their 10 or 15 minutes, every single person in the room is going to be approached by a server. So it's not very good for the attention span. So the host does 10 or 15 minutes, and then they bring up the opener that usually does between 20 and 40 minutes. They're typically an act that the headliner has brought with them or has specifically chosen. because if your headlining comedian is a clean comedian, you don't want your opener to be really raunchy or filthy, because if that crowd is coming to see that headliner specifically, they're probably going to be offended or put off. So the feature act or opener does 20 to 40 minutes, and then you have your headliner, and they usually do about an hour. Sometimes they'll go on longer than that. They just kind of feel it out. But that's a typical lineup at a regular comedy show in the States. Never have I ever been to a comedy show where even the most fantastic headliner comes out and does 2 straight hours. It's just unheard of. So I panicked a little bit and I thought, okay, can I bring a second comedian with me so they have someone else to listen to rather than just staring at me for 2 hours? And she said, yeah, that's fine. I said, don't worry, extra cost, I'll pay her directly. So they said, yeah, that's fine. I called on my friend Ellie, who's such a champ, and Ellie drove with me. And it was a good thing because there was a big snowstorm coming on the way there, and there was a part of me that worried that it might start on our long drive back, but we were all good. So Ellie very kindly did about 20 to 25 minutes. We got to this bar, and people were already sitting, already ready for the show when we got there at 5:45. They were in their seats, ready to roll. And the booker came up to me and said, okay, whenever you want to start, we're ready. If you want to start right at 6. Which is crazy because usually at fundraiser dinner shows, the first half an hour they're getting their food. But people were already in their seats, already drinking, already looking up at the front, waiting for the entertainment. So I was like, oh, crikey. So Ellie got up. I told her I'd be happy to do 2 hours, even though I thought the crowd would not like to sit through that much comedy. She's like, yeah, just do whatever. I definitely felt contractually obliged to do the 2 hours because it was kind of my fault for not confirming in the booking that I was going to do 120 minutes of material. That's egg on my face for not confirming with the booker. So I was willing to take the hit. The show started. Ellie was great. And then I got up, and out of curiosity, I set the timer on my phone to see how much time I did. And I was cooking. I was about an hour and 15 minutes into my set when the booker came up and said, yeah, I think you were right. Yeah, an hour probably would have been better. So anytime you don't, basically she said, you don't have to stay up here for 2 hours, which I appreciated. And you know what? I'm not even going to take that as a dig. Okay. I don't know if I'd want to listen to George Carlin for 2 hours if he came back from the grave. I probably would, okay, to be honest. I'm trying to think of comedians that I would want to sit in the same seat for 2 hours listening to them. So no offense taken, but because I was in the middle of a story and needed to finish it, I checked my little timer at the end. I did 1 hour and 29 minutes. So we fulfilled our end. We did 2 hours. It was a very strange gig because there wasn't a proper stage. It was a long room. And there was a bar at the back and then tables all in the middle, and everybody had to turn to stare at the front. So there wasn't a proper stage. There wasn't specific lighting for the performer. Because it was such a long set, I felt very free to walk around the entire room, to talk to people. I've never been a comedian that gets bent out of shape when people talk. If someone's shouting things out or they're being disruptive, if someone is noticeably inebriated and causing a ruckus, I think that's a problem. But I have 3 kids, okay? I'm used to talking over a lot of noise. But that's not true of all comics. I have run shows before where people that I've booked will stop their set and eviscerate the person talking. They're like, here's how it works. You shut the F up while I talk. Blah, blah. I am not into that. People left their houses. They paid a ticket to come here. I'm not going to disrespect the crowd. That's just not my vibe. So because it was such a long amount of time, sometimes I would ask questions. I would hand the microphone to somebody to answer it. There definitely were people shouting out different stuff, not in a mean way, but just being part of the show. Because I had mentioned I was Mormon at one point, I was talking about giving birth and I mentioned midwife. And then some guy shouted out like, how many wives you got? Or like polygamy. I can't even remember what he said, but so there would be like little things like that. But again, I had so much time on stage. I really didn't care if things got derailed. And the funny part is I didn't even cover all of my material. I genuinely had a fun time up there. It was a very long set. My voice was hoarse on the way home, but it was very fun. So thank you Wilson Democratic Club. It was a very fun gig. The other fun gig that I had, I got booked for a Galentine's Day party in New Jersey, and it was so fun. Honestly, these are probably my favorite types of shows. Most comedians want to be big and famous on a huge stage, have a green room stocked with luxury items, blah, blah, blah. No, man, a home show with all women is a blast. I've considered how that could be my business model. I'm like, do I sell ladies' night shows? Because it is such a good value for the money. If you have 10 to 20 gal pals and you all want to have a fun night out and you go to Helium Comedy Club, you're going to pay about $30 for a ticket. And then once you get in the showroom, you need to get 2 items and then you need to tip the staff. So for all of your friends to go to Helium, if you have 20 people and they all spend $50, that's $1,000 to see a comedian. Whereas if you invite somebody to your house, I will just say I did not charge $1,000 to do this Galentine's Day party. I don't know if you should reveal how much you charge for gigs, but it was a total blast. They were so cute. They were all in their mid-20s and some were married, some were single, some were dating. There was one woman there who was pregnant, which is very exciting. And it was a pajama party. They all had Valentine's themed pajamas. There was a ton of food. It's just when women get together, it's so fun. It was like a girls' Super Bowl party. They were so loving and inviting, and I felt free to talk about women-y stuff. For example, I have a joke about how it's embarrassing when you're on your period because dogs can smell it and you get all this unwanted attention if you visit somebody, for example, and their golden retriever has their nose in your crotch. I did that joke and there were a couple of ladies that were just crying, laughing, and it felt so good to connect with each other because so many of the gigs that I do in the city are like 80% men. So if you have a joke about being on your period, first of all, they can't relate to it. A lot of them think it's gross and shut down, and they certainly haven't had the experience that you've had with dogs. In fact, when I started into this joke, it starts with me talking about how I live near a dog park, and somebody immediately just started laughing because they knew the struggle. Oh, I love ladies' nights gigs. They're so fun. I've done a few of them. They're always a blast because every time I get there, everyone has made bread bowls with soup and carrot cake muffins, and there's dipped strawberries and champagne, and they're just having a great time, and I love it. I love the smallness of the show as well because it frees me up to talk directly with some of the women that are there. If they have a question or something, they feel free to ask it. It's just an amazing hang, and I loved it. So thank you, Galentine's Party. I will keep your name anonymous, but it was so fun. I was a bit concerned that maybe my stuff wouldn't hit because it's been a while since I was in my mid-20s and the landscape has changed quite a bit. So I wasn't sure if culturally we would line up on stuff. But no, it turns out the experience of being a woman is pretty universal. So I really, really enjoyed that. And I wanted to share one of my little manifestation success stories. Okay, if you've listened to this stuff, you know that I'm into manifesting. But I have a bone to pick because most people, when they say they're manifesting something, they're really just saying, I want XYZ. But they're not actually doing the stuff that you need to do to see that happen because manifesting has a lot to do with disciplining your mind and entering a creative state very intentionally. It needs to come from a place of wholeness and abundance and not lack. I had a couple of indirect but very cool, what my husband would call coincidences, but I would call gifts from the universe. Okay, first one. When I left for my gig in rural Pennsylvania, it was one of the coldest days of the year. Turned on the car, went totally fine, did my gig, got back in the car, drove back. No problem. The next day, my husband took the car to go sledding and it wouldn't start. And he was like, oh yeah, this happens when it just got too cold, so it won't start. And that's happened to him multiple times where he gets behind the wheel and the car wouldn't start. We took the car to the shop. Supposedly they fixed everything, but it wouldn't start for him. And to me, that's a miracle because I went out on a day that was colder than the day he went out and it worked for me. And in fact, the same thing happened when I went to the Galentine's party. Turned on the car, no problem, made it there, stopped at a grocery store. When I went to turn on the car, it wouldn't turn on. And I just closed my eyes, I took a deep breath and I just imagined how it would feel if the car started as normal. And then it started. I manifested that shit. I want to make sure that I don't want to swear on this podcast because I don't want it to be marked as explicit. I really don't mind swearing. I did when I was Mormon, and I didn't swear, and I didn't like when other people swore. Now I don't. Now I don't give a just kidding. Yeah, when I upload these, I have to say if it's explicit or not. So I'm just going to say shh. In fact, I had a friend in college that would do that because I went to a Mormon college, and she would only say the first syllable of a swear word. She'd be like, I look like shit, or like, what the fuck is that guy doing? So there we go. Okay, so same thing. When I left the Galentine's party, car wouldn't start. Close my eyes, deep breath. Feel the abundance of your car starting like normal. Boom, it worked. Next day, my husband used the car, wouldn't start. Oh, I'm amazing. Okay. What's the other one? Okay, I think people very easily think that if you're into manifesting, law of attraction, whatever, and you buy a lotto ticket and you win $2,000 on a scratch card, oh, you manifested that because the chances are so slim. Like, that's clearly manifesting, right? Well, I had my own lotto card experience that I think is more interesting and miraculous and woo-woo than winning the lotto. And that is the fact that we took the car back and said, I know we just spent a few grand on this thing, but it still isn't starting. Is it the battery? Is it this? So they fixed it. And when my husband went up to pick up the car, he mentioned, hey, we've spent a lot of money here, and this is kind of a lot. He just sort of brought it up. And they docked the bill. They discounted it like thousands of dollars. And to me, that is very clearly money comes to me easily and frequently. That is huge. Bolt from the blue. Wow. My husband's like, or they're just being a nice person. I'm like, you don't understand. That's what this whole law of attraction, law of assumption, bridge of incidents, all this kind of stuff happens from people just randomly being nice to you or having synchronicities. So he doesn't think it's a woo-woo miracle, but I think that it's less likely that an auto shop would just discount your bill by thousands of dollars. I think that's more rare than someone winning a couple grand on a scratch card. Go ahead, fight me in the comments if you wish, but I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it as a win. Okay, those were some of my little abundancy miracles that happen. And now I'm going to tell you about something that I'm engineering on my own. When I flew to Edinburgh last year, the airline told me that my personal item was too heavy. It was like 2 pounds over. And they said that I would have to check the bag, which I couldn't do because it was a soft-shelled bag and it had my harp in it. And I knew that if they threw it in the bottom of the plane, my harp could get crushed and then I would have no show because my harp was a big part of my show. So being the cheap B word that I am, I grabbed my bag, I went to the back of the airport, and I put on 4 pairs of trousers, 5 shirts. I took out all the trail mix and books and everything, and I shoved them down my pants. Like it was, oh wait, I used trousers and then I used pants. Over in the UK, pants is underwear. So did I put them down my underwear? No, down my leggings. Okay, down my leggings and trousers. I loaded myself up. I looked ridiculous, but I brought the bag back and it was fine. I was pissed because I easily weighed 100 pounds less than the guy behind me in line. And I was going to have to pay. The only way that I could take this bag as it was without emptying the contents and putting them on my person was to upgrade to first class where they allow a heavier carry-on. They wanted like $450 for me to be able to carry this bag with me. And I was like, what? The guy behind me weighs more. Like, I don't weigh that much. 2 pounds, come on. So because I'm flying over there in a month, I don't want the same thing to happen. Oh, I'm so excited about this. I'm so excited about this idea, especially because I haven't found anyone else that's done it. I know that if I put up a video of me figuring this out, it could potentially go viral because it's such a genius idea. I got an oversized fishing vest. I think it's a large or extra large men's fishing vest. It has a bunch of pockets in it. But the main part is that the back panel is pretty wide. So I sewed a laptop sleeve in the back of this vest so I can carry my laptop on my person, which is probably the heaviest item, single item that I put in my bag. And then I've got my little pockets for my snacks. And this is a trick that I learned from YouTube. You can take those neck pillows that you wear to sleep on a plane and you can stuff those with socks and underwear and stuff, and they don't count it. Oh, I'm going to save thousands of dollars. With this one hack, airlines, hey! I'm so happy about my secret vest. And then I just wear it under my jacket, so you can't even tell. Oh, it's brilliant, y'all. I'm so excited about this. So that's what I've been working on. I wanted to cover some of the things that I've been learning from Cal Newport. Do you know who Cal Newport is? He is a normcore icon. Let me tell you, this guy looks like your typical suburban dad waiting to pick up his kids to take them to piano lessons. You could not get a whiter, more basic looking, boring guy than Cal Newport. Sorry, Cal, I love you, but I would cast you as an extra to be in the audience at a PTA meeting. That's all I'm saying. Cal Newport is probably best known for never having had social media and speaking out against digital distraction. He's written a bunch of books about it. He's a professor at Georgetown. I think it's Georgetown or Stanford or something. And he teaches like data science or computer stuff. But he's been a very outspoken critic of the consequences of distraction, but specifically digital distraction. And the reason I love Cal Newport is because he's somebody who has managed to become very influential, very respected, to have millions of people listen to what he says, and he's never had to have social media to do it. If you've listened to any of my other episodes, you know that social media is a thorn in my side. I detest Meta products. I think they started out okay, and they just went off the rails. In fact, it has been just over a year since I deleted Instagram from my phone. Now, I never had Instagram before I started comedy. I got Instagram in 2022 because that's when I started doing comedy in earnest, and you have to DM certain bookers for spots on open mics and shows. So there's literally no way to get on a bunch of shows if you don't have Instagram. So I got it purely to message people for spots. But I then quickly realized I would message somebody and say, hey, I'm going to be in Seattle. Can I have a spot on this show? And then they would look at my Instagram and I had nothing posted, and I had maybe 2 followers or something. And I kind of looked like a robot or something. So then I realized, okay, I've got to post something so I look like a real person. Okay, I've got to get some followers. But I never wanted to be a part of Instagram. And it was especially baffling because I didn't want my Instagram followers to be my actual close personal friends and family members. That's the easiest way to kind of build a following right away, is to follow all your siblings, your parents, your coworkers, stuff like that. But because I wanted my comedy to be my own and I didn't want feedback from my family members, I wanted it to be my own thing, I chose not to friend or follow my family members or people that I knew from church. I just hated it from the start. I've never liked the, hey guys, I just had the most amazing sandwich. You guys should check this out. Or I think one of the most difficult things about being in a toxic relationship with a narcissist, no, I've never liked it. I've never liked Instagram. The main reason is because before I even had Instagram, this was years ago, I saw an article where they compared the pros and cons of different social media or apps on mental health. And Instagram was the #1 worst one for mental health. There was only one that had a slightly positive benefit, and that's YouTube. YouTube to me does not feel like a social media as much. In fact, this article cited that YouTube is more educational, and that's primarily what I use it for, like sewing tutorials or how to edit the background in an image, stuff like that. So sorry, I'm on another Instagram rant, but that's why I like Cal Newport, because not only does he rant about it, but he does it so eloquently and with data. I've been listening to some of his podcasts recently, and he talks about the slope of terribleness and how when we're on social media, we don't see opposing viewpoints and we can dehumanize other people and disassociate. And that's absolutely been my experience. In fact, I fully deactivated my Facebook a few months ago. Now, I've never had Facebook on my phone, but I still had the desktop version. And there are some legitimately helpful groups on Facebook. It's how I found the tech for my show. It's how I found housing for Edinburgh Fringe. It's how I find open mics and shows. It can be a very useful tool. So occasionally I would go on there for business related stuff, but I wasn't engaging with friends or family or anybody from my Facebook account. But when the Charlie Kirk stuff happened and I went on Facebook really quickly to, I think I was checking like a festival deadline or something like that. I went on there and it was so full on. And within about 2 minutes, I was just raging about what was going on. And I went, they got me. They got me. So I'm just like, no, I don't want this at all. So I deactivated it. So nobody can contact me from my old Facebook page. It's there if I'm trying to like get in contact with my high school biology teacher or something. But it's been great not to have it. I have a business account, so if I need to look up different groups and things like that, I can do that. But I was so shocked by how quickly I was all fired up. And I'm somebody that can get easily fired up. And that's one of the things that bothers me so much about social media, which honestly is a misnomer. Cal Newport, forget the exact term that he uses. He says something like curated attention harvesting, something like that. And it's true. When Facebook started, it was cool because I was in college and I found my high school friends that I had lost touch with. And it was pretty boring and basic. In fact, I remember when Facebook introduced mini feed and we all lost our minds. We were like, this is crazy. We thought it was so invasive. There were Facebook groups that people made called like, I can't even take a piss without it showing up on mini feed. We all felt very much Big Brother. Why does everybody know everything about me? That was the early days of Facebook. Then once they figured out ads, it then became about keeping us on Facebook as long as we could, because the longer we were on there, the more ads we would see and the more money they could make. I don't really know how Instagram started and how it progressed because I didn't sign up for it in the early days. One interesting thing Cal Newport noted was that TikTok really started to transform the other apps because TikTok, unlike Facebook, where you have to friend people for them to see your profile, or Instagram, where you would need to follow, TikTok's aim was simply to keep you on the app. That was it. Nothing else. No worrying about hearing how your friends are doing or creating some kind of persona. It was just about eyeballs. And TikTok's launch was kind of like perfect storm. I think TikTok started right as the pandemic was starting as well. So everybody was home and bored. And TikTok has really influenced the comedy industry and turned it on its head, because up to that point, in order to be a comedian, you'd have to do open mics and little bar shows, and then hopefully you'd go on the road and you could be a feature act and maybe get a headline. You would just grind for years before you could have your own audience. And then TikTok happened and you just have people at home doing lip syncing or dancing or ranting about something, and they would become this huge star. And then they started doing comedy clubs. These were people who had 0 minutes of stage time and they were selling out comedy clubs. And it really irks comedians when this happens, because you've been out there putting in the work, putting in the time, getting the stage presence, learning how to organize your sets. And then some TikToker that had a few reels blew up is now on stage and they have a big notebook that they're reading from and they don't have stage presence. And yeah, so it's been bonkers. TikTok really started to make a dent in the viewership and the market share of attention. So Facebook and Instagram started really focusing on videos. And as you know, now most of Instagram is Reels. They want you putting up videos all the time. And that's the attention economy. Tech billionaires get paid huge sums of money for you to stare at a screen. In fact, the current statistic is that the majority of social media users are on it 4 to 5 hours a day. The average user scrolls the height of the Eiffel Tower every day on their phone. Is that not insane? I did the math. I was like, okay, if you got social media when you were 16 and you used it till you were 75 and you did it, I don't know if I put in 4 or 5 hours a day, that's 10 years of your life. 10 years, not like working days, like all day, every day, 10 years of that. That's so crazy to me. I've really liked not having Instagram on my phone for the last year, but I find that I will still be on the desktop version. That sometimes I'll go on there to see if I have any messages, and then I got sucked in. And that's definitely what had been happening to me, especially with all the stuff going on with ICE and Epstein files. And I tell myself that I want to be informed, I want to know what's going on, but I'm getting my news source from not only people who agree with me, but people who are incredibly good at rage bait. And honestly, it does put a wedge between me and the people that I love, because there are a lot of family members that I have that don't have the same political views. And when I see these reels and when I take in all these videos and all these hot takes, I honestly start to feel distant from my family. Like, how could they have voted for Trump? How could they? And that, it just doesn't feel good. So I installed the new version of Beeper. If you do not know about this, I highly recommend Beeper. It is an app that lets you connect with other apps and just sends you the messages you get from them. So you can connect it with LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, I think probably TikTok, all of those. And they have a desktop version and they have a phone version. So basically, you only see the messages that people directly send you, which is kind of all I ever wanted Instagram for anyway, just the messaging feature. And like Cal Newport says, when you take those addictive, curated apps off of your phone, like TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, when you take those off, your phone's kind of boring. And I found that to be true. I open my email a lot, and email really isn't that exciting. Most of what I get is marketing stuff that has to do with my job and, oh, the hiking club is having a meetup. It's not really like, ooh, tell me more, tell me more. It's pretty boring, and I have loved it. I've also been humbled because I don't get that many direct messages. I'm going to be honest with you. When you stop engaging with the platform, you stop getting a lot of direct messages, because when you see reels, for example, and you're like, oh, this is important, I should share this, I'm going to help boost this post because everyone needs to see it. So you message somebody and then they message you back, oh, LOL, good point. And then you chat back and forth. But if I'm not posting things, I'm not commenting, I'm not sending things, I really don't get that many messages. And I realize all those times that I opened Instagram to see if I had any messages, it's really such a royal waste of time. And deep down, I knew that the whole time. I've always resented this idea of the expectation of being constantly available. I remember when text messaging came out, and I hated it, especially before the QWERTY keyboard or touch screens. You had to press the same number multiple times until you got to the letter that you want. It took a really long time. And I remember thinking, just call somebody. If you say, hey, let's meet at 5 o'clock, I'll just call, hey, you want to meet at 5? Okay, I'll drive and I'll pick up so-and-so. So much easier than oh. I've always hated text messaging and push notifications. That was another thing that I heard early on about how detrimental push notifications are. So I've never had them on my phone. I hate when phones are binging and beeping and buzzing. Doesn't it drive you crazy? It drives me crazy. It does drive you crazy because the science is there. And that's one of the reasons I went to Cal Newport, because he is famous for talking about deep work. And I know that there are some concepts that I'm really trying to get to the bottom of in my comedy and in my writing. And I find it difficult for me to really sit down and write. Like for a couple of hours, I can do little chunks. Now, part of it is I get interrupted by my kids a lot. But I love getting in that kind of flow state where you're just really involved in it. And a huge part of that is eliminating the distractions from your life that you feel like you can't get rid of. So holding on to social media is like wanting to quit smoking, but you're carrying a pack of cigarettes around with you at all times. It's too convenient. It's too easy. So I've blocked Instagram on my desktop. And I'm kind of lazy, so I don't want to figure out how to uninstall this plugin. But basically, if I type in Instagram on my browser, it's like, this site is blocked. I don't like the feeling of being interrupted all the time. In fact, one of the things that made this grow to such a pitch in my mind was after reading the book Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. Incredible book. But you find out how bad it is for your brain to switch between tasks. Cal Newport also talks about this. He calls it context switching, and this idea of fragmented attention and how inefficient it is, and how there's this, they call it attention residue. I've heard this before in some writers' groups, that it takes about 15 minutes for your mind to fully get into the next thing that you're doing. And so when you're constantly switching, you're never really getting fully into something where you're going to be able to recall it, or you're going to be creative or productive. So Stolen Focus talks a lot about this as well, and gives the example of how we used to have leaded gasoline. They used to put lead in, and there was a particular town somewhere in the South where there was a petrol refinery, and it was pumping all this lead into the environment. And then the kids at school were basically getting dumber. Their IQs were lowering, their attention was down, test scores plummeted, all this stuff. And the moms in the town saw what was happening, and they're like, this lead is destroying our kids. We need to get rid of this. And I guess they did some tests or something. They found out that, oh, actually, we don't need to put lead in gasoline. So that's why we have unleaded gasoline, because some moms were like, hey, our kids are the most important thing to us. This is insane. And eventually legislation was passed, and that's why we have unleaded gasoline. Johan Hari's point is we need unleaded phones, I guess. We need to put pressure on the people designing these technologies because it's making us dumber. It's making us more violent. We aren't able to focus or create, which I think a lot of us agree with, but what's the alternative? I may have mentioned this before, but one day, just for the crack, I designed what I wish my social media app was, what the interface on the home screen would look like, how you could prioritize things. And I love this thing. I would absolutely develop it, but it's a huge project. Surely there's somebody else working on this. And I tried to find if there were some emerging social media alternatives. And I found one it's called MeWe, which reminds me of Shiwi. Do you know what a Shiwi is? Do you know what a Shiwi is? It's like this oddly shaped funnel that women can put on their hoo-ha so they can pee standing up. It's mostly used when people go camping or to like a music festival where they might not have access to a toilet. So you like carry around this thing. So that's a Shiwi, and I think of that every time I hear MeWe. Anyway, I went on MeWe. I was like, maybe this will be the next thing. Like, this looks okay. Ugh, garbage. There's nobody is on it. I even looked up comedians. I was like, maybe there's some reels on here. There was nothing. So I don't know who's going to design it, but I would love an app that nudges me to connect to the people that I love, help me along my goals to learn about different things, and make the world a better place. It's absolutely possible. But right now we're living through this like third opium war. For some reason, I've been curious about the opium wars lately. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I think there were two main ones. And it was England sending a bunch of opium to China, and then everybody became opium addicts, and they were just like falling over in the streets. Opium dens everywhere, people not getting anything done. And this famous Chinese like philosopher, thought leader guy wrote a letter to the Queen of England. It's like, how can you call us a friend when you send us this poison? Like, stop sending us this stuff. It's destroying our society. So when the next shipment of opium came in, they had basically a Boston Tea Party where they destroyed all the boxes and threw it into the harbor, which, what a time to be a fish. Oh man, can you imagine swimming in a stream of pure heroin? But that's how I feel about these apps. When you go to the park and you see everybody sitting like hunched over their phone, it looks like the same drawings of the opium wars where there's just people like passed out on the street. Everyone's hunched over a pipe, like drinking laudanum. It's insane to me that it's been allowed to go on the way it is as long as it has. And the onus is on us as consumers to step away from it. And that's one of the things that I have been really wanting to get to the bottom of. I really wanted to get into this in my last show, and I was not able to successfully do it. So it was not a feature in my show. But when people find out that I was Mormon, they think it's crazy. They think Mormons are crazy. They think it's a cult. They think you're so sheltered and religion is so controlling. They think it's crazy that Mormons pay 10% of their income to the church, which has hundreds of billions of dollars, all this kind of stuff. And I get that. But what's crazier to me is that most of you don't like Instagram, but you're still on it. Most people hate Instagram more than I disliked certain aspects of the Mormon church. And yet I had to step away from it because there were too many things that did not feel right to me for me to continue using my time, my talent, my energy, my money on the Mormon church. I think the Mormon church does more good for humanity than Instagram does. I don't think everyone would agree with me on that, but I do think most people will agree that social media has had a negative impact on a lot of people, that it's exploitative, exploitative. I haven't had to say that out loud. Sorry if I mispronounced that. See, I'm being vulnerable here. You can see what a dum-dum I am. Seriously, though, it feels weird after turning my back on a church that I gave everything to. It was my whole life. And for me to go, I just can't keep doing this because I don't agree with this and that, and I wasn't told this. Leaving it just felt so good. Like the analogy, it was like taking off a tight shoe. It felt so freeing. And people recognize that when I tell them. They're like, oh, it must be amazing. And they ask me that all the time. Oh, what have you liked the most since leaving the Mormon church? And oh, you must feel amazing. Y'all, that is what leaving social media feels like. It feels so good. I have so many more hours of the day back. I'm not replaying comments or ruminating about something that I read or saw. And that's the thing. If you get your news from social media and that's what you're worried about, you're like, well, social media is how I find out what's going on. Guess what? There's this thing called a newspaper. Okay. Seriously, though, help support journalism. I did that. I subscribed to the Philadelphia Inquirer to help support local journalism because they're covering all this stuff and they send you emails and they're informative, but they're not like crazy. They don't take over your thoughts. So one example, I just got an email this morning about how in the state of Pennsylvania, we are rejecting Trump's concentration camps. I don't know how far this will go, if it will go to court, but it's nice to know that my state is saying no to the dehumanization of all of these immigrants that are being haphazardly rounded up, being denied basic human rights, tearing families apart, all of that. And I can get that from a Philadelphia Inquirer article without having to jump into the opium den to learn about it. So yeah, if you want to stay politically informed, subscribe to a newspaper. Find a Substack account that you like. Something like, go on C-SPAN. You can just actually watch what's going on if you want to. But if you want somebody who sums up the news and what's happened, there are podcasts that do that. There's blogs. There's so many other places than Zuckerberg's hellhole of brain harvesting. Another thing I wanted to share about Cal Newport was he mentioned that he did an experiment with people from his newsletter. He got 1,600 volunteers to give up social media for 30 days. Now, this wasn't like an official experiment. Obviously, the control group is just people who subscribe to his newsletter, but that's a significant sample size. The advice that he gave was, if you're going to quit social media cold turkey, have an alternative and it will be easier. So if you just say, that's it, no more Facebook, no more TikTok, you're going to be really bored. You're going to go through withdrawals and it will be difficult. And he was right. The people who managed to make it the 30 days and beyond were people who replaced it with a hobby or social activity. Maybe somebody wants to go running more or learn to play the clarinet. Replace it with something. Go out in the real world and have coffee with a real person. Go out to dinner with your college friend. You've got to have something to fill the hole or you're going to fall off the wagon because we're so conditioned to check it and to open it, which I thought was actually pretty hilarious because around this time last year, right after I deleted Instagram, I started getting obsessive about neon yellow and starting to dye and sew my own clothes. I didn't intentionally have this hobby of, well, for the hours that I would have been on Instagram, doom scrolling through rage bait, I'll learn how fiber reactive dyes work. But that's what happened. And you know what? Am I just replacing a bad with a slightly less bad? Maybe. Have you been talking to my husband? Yeah, he doesn't like my obsessive nature, but I love dyeing clothes neon yellow, especially because the clothes that I get are from the dollar bin at the thrift store. Okay, I'm justifying it, but I'm saying I'm a lot happier standing over a boiling pot of Dharma dye fluorescent yellow and a merino sweater that I got for $1. I am way happier doing that than being in an Instagram hellhole. It's amazing. I've been sewing again, not just my sneaky laptop sleeve, but really fun neon tops that I'm excited to wear on my European tour next month. It's been really fun to make a list of things that I like to do or things that I'd like to learn and then going for it. I have so many more hours. So I just started a screenwriting class and I've written a few scripts now. I'm really enjoying that. I've been playing my harp more. I learned the Irish national anthem. Could I have done that while still wallowing in the trenches of Facebook? No. It's been amazing not having social media. I read more, I sleep more, I spend more time with my family. It is fantastic. I'm sorry if I'm coming off kind of preachy, but maybe I'm not sorry because I actually am happier. And as a lifelong Mormon, we are taught to share our happiness with people. I just can't help but being evangelical about my beliefs. And my belief is that Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, honestly, Substack is getting kind of sleazy. Substack has an app and they have a feed, like a homepage where people share images or quotes or something and then they get reshared. And it's starting to feel kind of social media-ish. So I haven't been writing as much on Substack. I'm not sure what direction it's going to go. And this is what happens with these tech companies. They come up with a good idea, it does well, it starts to take off, and then it gets bought by a big evil company that makes it bad. I don't feel like I know enough about the history to say that's what happened to Instagram, but Instagram was not a Meta product when it started. And then Facebook, which is Meta, bought it. Ooh, here's another reason. I just got sent an article about the apps that collect the most amount of personal data. And all of the top 5 apps were Meta apps. It's Instagram, Facebook, Messenger, Threads. Oddly, Aeropostale or something was on there. There were a couple things one was like a rideshare app that I hadn't heard of. Am I going to link that in the show notes? I don't know. Just Google it. Thank you for listening to my rant about abstinence. Have you heard of that? Abstinence? Woo! I just saw a TED Talk where this gal coined that phrase, and I'm going to use it. I'm abstinent. I do have YouTube. I will say, I do have YouTube on my phone, but it's weird. I don't get stuck on it as long as I do the other ones. Isn't that strange? If it becomes a problem, I can delete it. But as for today, I feel amazing. I'm so excited. I'm so happy to be going to Europe next month. If you want to check me out on my European tour, I will be in Ireland from March 18th to the 22nd. I've got shows in Dublin and Cork. Then I will fly over to London, where I have a few shows there. Then on the 26th of March, I go to Cardiff. Then I take the train all the way up to Scotland, where I will be performing at the Glasgow International Comedy Festival at noon on March 28th. Then the next day, I fly to Copenhagen to do a show on the 29th in the evening. And then from the 30th and the 31st, I might just hang out in Copenhagen, or I could bounce back to Ireland. I'm not really sure. I have those dates kind of open. I could squeeze in another show perhaps, or just enjoy being a tourist and eating delicious baked goods. I can't wait for Copenhagen. I'm so thrilled to go there. I know it tends to be a kind of overcast, rainy place, but I've always wanted to go and I never have, and I'm living my best life, y'all. I manifested that I did. These are all places that I visited in my mind palace, and now they're materializing. So don't be afraid to want cool things. Don't be afraid to visualize it. Don't be afraid to imagine it. Let your body feel what it would feel like to XYZ, whatever it is. You've probably heard people say the fantasy's better than the reality. Well, then fantasize, because we've all had that happen. We've all thought, okay, I'm going to go on a trip to Paris or something. And we envision how great it's going to be. And and I'll do this. And then we get there and there's dog shit all over the sidewalk. And we're like, oh, Paris is kind of dirty. Oh, it's kind of expensive. It's kind of loud. It's kind of touristy. Yeah, the fantasy is better than the reality. Now, I'm not saying that you'll always just do things in fantasy and never do them in reality, but there is no harm visualizing in great detail the things that sound really interesting or delightful to you. If you're able to do that, it's more likely to happen in real life. Ooh, I do so many fun visualizations in Ireland. I cannot wait. Okay, I have had one, I didn't even drink the whole pint, but I've had a pint of Guinness. I've done it once. I was with my Irish friends. It was at Fringe. It was at the bar that apparently has the best Guinness in Edinburgh. But I'm going to get to have real Irish Guinness, which is kind of a waste on me because I don't even know what bad Guinness tastes like. And I really don't drink beer. I think doesn't it like beer belly, like it bloats you. It's very yeasty. And from what I understand, a pint of Guinness is kind of like eating a 12-inch hoagie. It's just like, oh, it's just like this big yeasty bomb in your belly. So maybe the fantasy of drinking a pint of Guinness in Ireland is not going to be as good as the reality. But you know what? I'm doing it and I can't wait. I can't wait to see my Irish friends that I met at Fringe and meet new people. The Irish are great crack, and they will hate that I said great crack. I don't know how Irish people are gonna like. I love them too much. I don't know how Irish people are going to receive me, honestly. I have a feeling they're going to find me obnoxious. They are not going to love me as much as I love them. No, I'm not going to manifest that. You know what? I'm not manifesting that. Nope, I want Irish people to like me as much as I like them. I'm going to visualize that. I just feel badly because so many Americans that go over there ruin it for the rest of us. But I promise Ireland I will be on my best behavior. I will not bring up controversial topics like which Tato brand is better or the IRA. I know to stay away from those topics. I don't have a dog in that fight, but I will happily spend my rapidly depreciating dollars on your shores. I'm excited to go to London. I've been there a few times. I haven't really taken advantage of all the Londoniness because I'm usually just there for shows and to hang out with friends, but I think I might try to be a bit more touristy during the day. Maybe hit up some of my comedian friends if they want to go to a museum or something. And then Cardiff. I don't think I've been to Cardiff. I've been to Carnarvon. I've been to Abergavenny. And where was that castle? I've been to Wales a few times, but I don't think I've ever been to Cardiff. I'm very excited about Cardiff and also seeing comedian friends there. Of course, Glasgow is a great time. I'm staying with a friend up there. I'm on a couple of shows. I can catch a couple of shows. Comedy festivals are always great for that. And then, of course, Copenhagen. That's enough for me. Thank you so much for listening to episode 10. This will conclude the first season of the Leah Renee podcast. I actually want to manifest that in season 2, I will have guests on my podcasts. If my Irish comic friends don't find me too obnoxious, I might see if I can wangle a few interviews with my Irish comic friends. Oh, that would be so fun. All right, now I know what I'm doing for my next visualization. Podcasts. Wait, am I really manifesting more work for myself? Of course I am, because I love what I do. I guess that's what I'm going to be creating in the quantum field. All right, well, I've put it out into the universe. Let's say I record 3 to 5 podcasts with my mates when I'm over in Europe. That's what I'm putting out there. We'll see if it materializes. Here, I'll make you a deal. I will work to coordinate these podcasts if you will give up social media just to give it a shot, just to see how you feel. Before you do, see if you can pick up a hobby that you've always wanted to try. It's so fun. It's great. It's a great life. Good luck out there, everyone. Europe, I will see you soon.